Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of If You Could Hide to Kolob podcast. My name is Clive. Today, we'll be getting into Samuel, a bit more of 1 Samuel, a bit more to go through for that. So let's get into it. I'll start off with the quote. This is from General Conference, April 1955, by Sterling Sill. He says, "You can't merely snap your fingers and get faith in God, any more than you can snap your fingers and get great musical ability. Faith takes hold on us only when we take hold of it. The great psychologist William James said, 'That which holds our attention determines our action.' And one of the unfortunate things in life is that we sometimes focus our attention on the wrong thing." Now, that works out quite well with what we're going to talk about today. Some people in today's Come Follow Me really focused on what they wanted more than what the Lord wanted, which actually seems to be quite a thing, quite a theme of the Old Testament. But anyway, let's get into it. So we're starting straight off into chapter 8. This is Samuel. Samuel is getting on with age now. He's getting quite old. So he appoints his two sons as judges. His sons are named Joel and Abiah. Abiah. Good enough? Close enough? All right. So in verse 3, this is what it says of their sons. "And his sons walked not in his ways, but turned aside after lucre, and took bribes, and perverted judgment." So this almost reflects, it reflects quite similar to Eli, Samuel's teacher of the gospel. He had sons that were perverting judgment and doing the things that they shouldn't do. And now, unfortunately, Samuel's in the same predicament. He is a great man, a great leader, but his two sons, that he has ordained, I suppose, in a way, to be judges, have really turned away. So Samuel's really got to look down a different alley now. But the problem is, the people are starting to say to Samuel, "Well, don't give us any rulers anymore. We've seen so much corruption. Give us a king, appoint a king over the people." And Samuel, he really takes this personally, thinking, why am I rejected so much? But the Lord says this in verse 7. "And the Lord said unto Samuel, Hearken unto the voice of the people, in all that they say unto thee. For they have not rejected thee, but have rejected me, that I should not reign over them." A couple of things there. The Lord's gone, well, they want a king, give them a king. And it's not that they're rejecting you, it's because they're rejecting me. So they don't want someone to rule over them and say, let's do what the Lord is asking us to do. They want someone to rule over them and say, okay, forget the Lord, let's do this and do that and do all these other things. And so, they'll say, don't worry, it's not on you. It's really just me, my judgment. They don't want that anymore. And it's interesting that the Lord's gone, do what they ask. Instead of the Lord going, well, this is the promised people, I've got a plan. Brigham Young actually made a remark about this. He said that when people demand a ruler other than God, God will often grant their wish and let them experience the harsh consequences of their own choices. So obviously God's not going to abandon them, but he is going to show them that, this was all my plan all along. You should have kept going with me, because kings can be quite difficult. It does actually break down some of the warnings that Samuel gave the people. So he talks about some of the consequences that come from having a king that isn't a God-fearing person. It's basically in 10 all the way through to 17, but I'll just skip around bits and pieces. This is in verse 11. "This will be the manner of the king that shall reign over you. He will take your sons and appoint them for himself, for his chariots and for his horsemen, and some shall run before his chariots. And he will appoint his captains over thousands and captains over 50s, and will set to ear the ground and reap up harvest, and make his instruments of war and instruments of his chariots. He will take your daughters to be confectionaries and be cooks and be bakers. You will take your fields and your vineyards and your olive yards, and basically take a tenth of your seed in your field." Basically, it's not going to be God-fearing. It's going to be, well, if I'm the king, therefore I should get a lot more. I should get money. I should get the harvest. The men will be my servants and the women will be my cooks. This is the the thing that they're heading towards if they decide they want a king. And unfortunately, the people don't really listen and say, "Well, yeah, we still want a king anyway." They they say, "This is just what we decided. This is what we're going to do." Now, in chapter 2, we see that Samuel is looking for someone to be king. He's still trying to find the right person. He's not just going to go, "Fine, you want a king? Here's some random Joe blogs." He's still going to actually try and find the right person. So here in verse 2 of chapter 9, it says, well, it's talking about a man named Benjamin. And verse 2, he says, "And he had a son whose name was Saul, a choice young man, and a goodly, and there was not among the children of Israel a goodlier person than he. From his shoulders and upward he was higher than any of the people." So not only was he a great man, but he was a very big man. And so seems to be the right person. So the Lord found someone and said to Saul, all right, said to Samuel, "All right, let's go find this guy." Now, this story starts off with Saul. His father has one of his donkeys has gone missing, so Saul heads out to go and find his donkey, and the Lord says, "Look to Samuel. There's a man going out there. You'll come across him. I'll show you who he is." And he's sort of guided towards Samuel. Verse 15 and 16. "Now the Lord had told Samuel in his ear a day before Saul came, saying, 'Tomorrow about this time I will send thee a man out of the land of Benjamin, and thou shalt anoint him to be captain over my people, Israel, and he may save my people out of the hands of the Philistines, for I have looked upon my people, because their cry is come unto me.'" So essentially, yeah, there you go. That's as it goes. So now the next day comes and Samuel meets Saul, and Saul says, "Well, who are you?" And he says, Samuel, in this verse 19, "And Samuel answered Saul and said, I am the seer. Go up before me unto the high place, for ye shall eat with me today and tomorrow. I will let thee go and will tell thee all that is in thine heart. So come up with me, let's have a meal." I suppose Samuel wants to get to know Saul, and then he says, "After we've had this meal tomorrow, I'll tell you everything you need to know." So then he speaks to him and he tells him the proposition that he's got for him. You can be king over this people. But then Saul, it seems to be quite a shy person. So in verse 21, it says, "Saul answered him and said, Am not I a Benjamite of the smallest of the tribes of Israel?" Which we spoke about last week. The Benjamites turned quite wicked and almost went extinct. "And my family, the least of all the families of the tribe of Benjamin. Wherefore then speakest thou so to me?" So not only is it the smallest of the tribes, I mean, they were quite wicked. They became quite small, but out of all the families of the Benjamites, my family is really the lowest. Like, I'm no one. So why would I be chosen to do any of this? There is a little back and forth here between Samuel and Saul. I'm going to skip over it. Essentially, Samuel convinces Saul to do these things. It's not easy pickings from here. Some stuff happens in verse 10, which we'll get into now. So it starts off with Samuel anointing Saul to then be the leader. So he's not anointing him. So he anoints him with oil, but he's not anointing him to be a prophet. Don't forget, he's not setting him apart to be a prophet. He's really setting him apart to be a captain of the people, a ruler, a leader, the king. So Saul isn't the next prophet, so try not to get that confused. But he does talk about how we'll see miracles, and you should look out for some miracles. He says in verse 6, "And the Spirit of the Lord will come upon thee, and thou shalt prophesy with them, and thou shalt be turned into another man." So yes, you don't have to be a prophet to prophesy. People have keys for particular things, which, I mean, we all know that the prophet has the keys for the world, but the bishop has keys for the ward, fathers have keys for the family, stake presidents have keys for the stake. Like, that's just the way it is. So you're going to be king, you're going to prophesy, and you're going to know the right way to rule, because God, even though God doesn't want a king, he's still not going to abandon his people. So he's still going to help you out, and you're going to see these things. Unfortunately, Saul still wasn't really confident. He wasn't a very confident ruler. So Samuel calls all the tribes together to explain to him that Saul is going to be the ruler and you need to see him as the ruler. But Saul went and hid. essentially. He's in verse 22. Well, he gets everyone together and he says, "Where's Saul?" In verse 22. Therefore they inquired of the Lord further, if a man should yet come thither. And the Lord answered, Behold, he hath hid himself among the stuff. So he's gone out and he's hid. He's not very confident. We'll get into in a minute how he becomes very confident. But I think this is, you sort of see this as well. There's an issue here. Verse 23 and verse 24. And they ran and fetched him thence. And when he stood among the people, he was higher than any of the people from the shoulders upward. And Samuel said unto all the people, See ye him whom the Lord hath chosen, that there is none like him among all the people. And all the people shouted and said, God save the king. So there you go. So they're all accepting him now as the king. God save the king. Obviously, they took that from the English national anthem. I don't know how old the king is. All right. Let's get into chapter 13. So actually quite a lot of stuff happens in chapter 12, but the material is chapter 8 to 10, then 13, then 15 and 16. So there is a little bit that happens in between, but let's just get into, as the reading material says, chapter 13. So verse 1, it says, Saul reigned. This is quite interesting. I mean, not to say that none of it is interesting, but there's a couple of things here as it goes. There's fascinating text. The Bible isn't complete, and so when they were putting it together, not a lot, but there were some things where they would just guess what they think might be put in here. So chapter 13 verse 1, Saul reigned 1 year, and when he had reigned 2 years, and he had I'll read it again. Saul reigned 1 year, and when he had reigned 2 years over Israel. That doesn't make any sense. There's a couple of things here. So in the original Hebrew text, it reads that the numbers here are missing. So it should read, Saul was blank years old when he began to reign, and he reigned blank 2 years over Israel. That's how it should read. In the New World Translation, which is what the Jehovah's Witnesses read, it reads as this: Saul was, and then it's got a question mark. Saul was years old when he began to reign, and for 2 years he reigned over Israel. That makes more sense to me than what the King James Version says, where it says Saul reigned 1 year, and when he had reigned 2 years over Israel. Like that doesn't. It's not really English. So anyway, so we know that it was probably 2 years that he'd reigned in Israel. I don't know what the first part was meant to say. Okay, so well, I mean, there is some evidence here as well that by this time Saul was a mature man. Because he had a son named Jonathan, which he gets into in verse 2, who is an adult military commander. He commands over 1,000 men. So there's evidences there. So let's get into verse 3. So Jonathan, who is again Saul's son, launches a preemptive strike, destroying the Philistines' garrison. So verse 3, and Jonathan smote the garrison of the Philistines that was in Geba, and the Philistines heard of it, and Saul blew the trumpet throughout all the land, saying, Let the Hebrews hear. So my son has broken through this garrison of the Philistines. Like, we've been talking about the Philistines for a while now. They're a hefty army going against the Israelites, and they're going to be at war for a long time. So now that his son's broken through this garrison, he wants everyone to know. And then in verse 5 it says, And the Philistines gathered themselves together to fight with Israel, 30,000 chariots and 6,000 horsemen, and people at the sand, which is on the seashore, in multitude. And they came up and pitched in Michmash, eastward from Bethlehem. Mishmash. It literally says Mishmash. So let's just go from that. So because of this that's happened, the Israelites, they're a huge army, right? They get tons of their chariots, tons of their horsemen. They go out seaside like that. They're coming from all different angles to go to war against the Israelites. And so it becomes way too overwhelming for the Israelite people. It says in verse 6, And when the men of Israel saw that they were in a strait, for the people were distressed, when the people did hide themselves in the caves, and in thickets and in rocks and in high places and in pits. So Jonathan's gone out and destroyed this garrison of the Philistines. They've retaliated in such force that the Israelites have panicked now and they've gone into hiding. And so Saul contacts Samuel and says, we need to ask the Lord for help. And so Samuel says, okay, go and wait for me. Go to Gilgal and wait 7 days for Samuel for me to arrive, and we'll offer burnt offerings to the Lord, and he will find favor in our battle. So in verse 8 it says this, and he tarried 7 days according to the set time that Samuel appointed, but Samuel came not to Gilgal, and the people were scattered from him. So he's got there, he's waited 7 days, he's in a big panic. Now, the problem is this, and Saul said, bring hither a burnt offering to me, and peace of offering, and he offered the burnt offerings. Now, Saul isn't a high priest. So for Saul to offer this burnt offerings, that's not the way you should do it. You can't just walk into the temple and start ministering to the, baptizing the dead and sealing people out. Like, you need to be called of God to do these things. But Saul took it upon himself, going, well, Samuel's not here, therefore I've got to go do it myself. Now, there's a bit of back and forth here when Samuel gets there. In fact, actually, now I think of it, there's a story in Chronicles. I'm pretty sure there's a guy in Chronicles that offers sacrifice when he shouldn't, and the Lord strikes him down with leprosy. So, it's pretty harsh, but Saul, he gets a sort of a different path. So Samuel comes, within the day. It says, and it came to pass that as soon as he had made an offering, burnt offering, behold, Samuel came, and Saul went out to meet him that he might salute him. And then Samuel says, what hast thou done? Well, Samuel says, well, the people were scattered, and I waited for you these days, and you didn't come. And so the Philistines had gathered themselves together, and I panicked, and I offered these burnt offerings. And Saul said, well, that's foolish. He says in verse 13, thou hast done foolish. Thou hast not kept the commandment of the Lord thy God, which he commanded thee. For now would the Lord have established thy kingdom upon Israel forever? So he's like, that's not right. So like when the apostles were fishing and the Lord was in the boat and the storm came and thrashed them around, and they panicked and said to the Lord, wake up, the boat's going to sink. And he said, oh, ye of little faith. Like, if Samuel has said, I'm going to come, we're going to offer burnt offerings, and the Lord will be on our side, that's sort of the same idea. Well, I'm going to come and I'm going to offer these burnt offerings. Don't just decide on your own, well, if I don't do this, we're going to die. You're of little faith. So this is the punishment that comes upon him. This is verse 14. Now thy kingdom shall not continue. The Lord hath sought him a man after his own heart, and the Lord hath commanded him to be captain over his people, because thou hast not kept that which the Lord hath commanded thee. So you can't be a ruler of these people anymore. If you can't wait, then you can't be a ruler of these people. And the Philistines are going to come, and we're going to have to rely on our own strength now. The Lord doesn't abandon his people, but he also, a punishment needs to be affixed. So it says here in verse 19, now there was no smith found throughout all the land of Israel, for the Philistines said, lest the Hebrews make them wars or spears. So the Philistines know that there's no blacksmith in Israel. So they're going to come to us with simple weapons. But the Philistines, they have chariots, they've got swords, they've got everything they need to do. So for Saul to then decide on his own that I'm going to offer this sacrifice unto the Lord, and the Lord obviously didn't accept it because it wasn't right, that's going to be a major issue for them. Okay, let's skip chapter 4, chapter 14, which is actually really good because they do eventually win again. There's a lot of fighting. Obviously, the Lord doesn't abandon his people. It's 52 verses, but we're told to skip it. So anyway, it's a good one. So now let's go to chapter 15. Now Samuel tells Saul to kill the Amalekites. Now we've spoken about the Amalekites before. They're very wicked people. And the Lord has When the children of Israel first got to the promised land, the Lord said, clear it all out, kill everyone, and let's, this will be your promised land. They decided, well, we're not going to do that. They've again on their own decided what is right. The Lord is the Lord. If God says do something, He's the one that, it's not on you. You know what I'm saying? Like, if the Lord said to me, you need to go and, I don't know, I can't think of a good example, but the Lord's gone up to them and said, kill these people. They're going to come and live with me in heaven. So whatever you do, that's the way it's supposed to be. So again, Samuel said to Saul, go and kill the Amalekites in verse 3. Now go and smite Amalek and utterly destroy all that they have, and spare not them, but slay both the man and woman, infant and suckling ox, and sheep, camel, and ass. Like, you need to wipe these people out. Now, in verse 4, it says, and Samuel gathered the people together and numbered them in Temael, 200,000 footmen and 10,000 men of Judah. So they go out to battle. But then in verse 9, it says, and Saul and all the people spared Agag, and the best of the sheep and the oxen, and all the fatling and the lambs, and all that was good, and would not utterly destroy them, but everything that was vile and refused that they destroyed utterly. So they destroyed everything that they thought that they should. Well, we're going to destroy everyone and everything except let's keep the good of their animals. Let's keep this guy Agag alive, because I think that's the way we should do it. But again, they're not doing what they've been asked to do. They have a commandment. They need to follow it. Verse 11, so Samuel, he's not happy with this. It repenteth me. When it says that, we got to check the Joseph Smith translation. Joseph Smith translation, I have set up Samuel to be a king, and he repenteth not that he hath sinned, for he is, let me go back up to 11, turned back from following me, and hath not performed my commandments, and it grieved Samuel, and he cried unto the Lord all night. Samuel, he's really trying to find the right replacement for him. The people have cried out and said, we need a king. It's on Samuel now. His sons didn't step up to the plate. Now he's got this Saul guy that seemed really good at the beginning. He was really shy. So you think, okay, well, shy people generally, they'll listen because, they want a leader. They want to follow someone. But he's really decided a lot of things on his own. And so again, we get this back and forth of Saul and Samuel. Saul saying, I've done right because I've saved the good animals to sacrifice to the Lord. And Samuel says, well, I gave you an instruction, you didn't follow it. And I said, you've said that, well, you've come up with a better idea. Like, that's not the way the Lord has done things. And so this is where Saul and Samuel now split off. Well, I can't trust you to be the ruler, so therefore you're not the ruler of this people anymore. It says in 35, and Samuel came no more to see Saul until the day of his death. Nevertheless, Samuel mourned for Saul, and the Lord repented again. Let's jump to 35. And the Lord rent the kingdom from Saul, whom he had made king over Israel. The Lord never repents. The Lord doesn't do anything wrong. But the Lord takes the kingdom away from Saul because of his wickedness. Now, again, the Lord didn't make a mistake calling Saul. People have their own agency, and there's reasons for everything. The Lord has never called a perfect person to do the perfect thing because they're perfect for the job. Everyone learns the way they learn, except Jesus, of course. All right, chapter 16. So now the Lord tells Samuel, okay, there is going to be another rule. Well, actually, the Lord actually says to Samuel, you got to stop mourning for Saul. In verse 1, and the Lord said unto Samuel, how long wilt thou mourn for Saul, seeing I've rejected him from reigning over Israel? For thine horn, fill thine horn with oil, and go, I will send thee to Jesse the Bethlehemite, for I have provided me a king among his sons. So stop mourning for Saul. I understand Samuel's grief. He's really tried hard with Saul, and there's a lot to the chapters that I've skipped over, but there's a lot that Samuel does for Saul. But the Lord's gone, look, let's move on. I've found you into somebody else. Now, Jesse, he's got a son that will be ruler. So Samuel calls Jesse and says, come and bring your sons. right? So Jesse comes and he's got tons of sons, which we'll get into now. So in verse 7 he says, well, in verse 6, and it came to pass that when they came, he looked on Elba and said, surely the Lord anointed is before him. So the oldest son, surely this is the guy. But the Lord said unto Samuel, look not on his countenance or on the height of his stature, because I have refused him. For the Lord seeth not as a man seeth, for man looketh on the outward appearance, but the Lord looketh into the heart. So the Lord's going, well, it's not him. You can see that he looks like a good ruler, but I can see the inside of his heart. Not the inside of his heart, that's weird, but his inside. I can see inside and what his heart is really saying. So he might seem great like Saul, but then there'll be a falling away. Oh, so, okay, well, let's bring the next son, Abinadab. So Abinadab in verse 8, then Jesse called Abinadab, and made him pass before Samuel. And he said, neither hath the Lord chosen this. So it's not him. Okay, well then let's go to the next one, Shammah. Shammah, verse 9. And Jesse made Shammah to pass by, and the Lord said, neither hath the Lord chosen this. Okay, well, there's got to be someone among these sons. Let's go to verse 10. And again, Jesse made 7 of his sons pass before Samuel. And Samuel said unto Jesse, the Lord hath not chosen thee. So here you got 7, 8, 9, 10 sons. You got 10 sons. The Lord hasn't chosen any of them. So surely there's another son. And Samuel said, this is verse 11, unto Jesse, are here all thy children? And he said, there remaineth yet the youngest, and behold, he keepeth the sheep. And Samuel said unto Jesse, send and fetch him, for we will not sit down till he come hither. Now, he's the youngest son. He's the sheep keeper. He's not someone who you would go, this guy is the next ruler. And so Jesse's gone, here's all my sons. They're all incredible. That guy's probably a bit too young. Plus, he's looking after our sheep. Don't worry too much about it. But Jesse's gone, I need to see him. Who is this man? So in verse 12, so he comes, he sent him and brought him in. Now he was rudder and withal a beautiful of a beautiful countenance and goodly to look at. And the Lord said, arise, anoint him, for this is he. So good-looking man, David is. Rudder's an interesting word. I looked that up. So rudder means red. Well, there's a debate. Some people think that he is red-skinned because he's out in the field all day, getting the sun, burning, red skin. Other people think that he was a redhead, which I guess is a reason why he wasn't picked. So it's interesting. So we have this son who seems quite different. Specifically pointed out that he's rudder compared to everyone else, but he's a beautiful looking person. We said, well, this is the one. This is the one I've anointed. Verse 13, then Samuel took the horn of oil and anointed him in the midst of his brethren. And the Spirit of the Lord came upon David from that day forward. So Samuel rose up and went to Ramah. So now he's gone and he's appointed David as the ruler. Verse 14, but the Spirit of the Lord departed from Saul, and an evil spirit, which was not, just my translation, which was not from the Lord, troubled him. So this is an interesting part. So Saul now finds out that there is a new ruler. I don't think he knows it's David at the moment, but he knows there's a new ruler, and he has lost the Spirit of God. You think about the type of person that he was. He was a shy young man. He was called to be this ruler. He was given this rule, and he ruled for a long time, well, a couple of years. He did what he thought was right, but what he thought was right wasn't right. And so in his mind, he's, not confused. I think he would have known by at this point, but more like, I thought I did right. And so, he's getting more and more frustrated. The anger is consuming him inside of him. And now it says that an evil spirit came upon him, but you think of his symptoms, right? So he gets sudden rage, extreme paranoia because he thinks everyone's plotting against him. He becomes deeply depressed, and every now and then he'll suddenly come out of it. But then the cycle will continue. Extreme rage, paranoia, depression, then recovery. These days, we wouldn't say that person is possessed by a demon. These days, we'd say that person has some kind of mental health issue that can be resolved. But back in those days, I think, I don't personally, I don't look at this and go, the Spirit of the Lord left him and an evil spirit went inside of him. Because, and I'll explain here, I'll read this part. So Saul asks for someone to play him music. I want you to find someone who is good at the harp, because that's the only thing that soothes me. So they go and they find a man who is David. Again, this is why I don't think he knew that David was the ruler yet, because he didn't make a fuss that it was David. And this is verse 23. And it came to pass, when the evil spirit from God was upon Saul, that David took an harp and played with his hand. So Saul was refreshed and was well, and the evil spirit departed from him. So every time he gets this rage and this paranoia and this depression, when the harp plays, he snaps out of it, and he becomes, almost back to refreshed again, the way he was. It just doesn't seem like an evil spirit. It seems more like he's gone through a lot, and now he's in this depression state. Again, I mean, interpret that the way you want, but I just don't see that the Lord would just allow an evil spirit to take over this Saul. I think Saul just becomes depressed from everything that's happened to him. Anyway, that is Samuel. That's this. Thank you for listening to another episode of If You Could Hide to Collab podcast. Follow us on Instagram, Facebook, YouTube. You can find all of our episodes so far on Spotify and Apple Music and anywhere else, Prime Music, anywhere really that you find your podcasts. So follow us there. And if you have any questions about anything that we've spoken of, you can definitely get in touch with us. Just send us a message on any of our social media platforms. And yeah, maybe even comment on our videos if any questions that you've got, if you can't seem to find us. And we'll definitely answer any question. The last thing we want to do is have people confused or not believing anything that we've said. And so if anything needs to be cleared up, just let us know, and we'll 100% will answer you. All right, and we'll see you next week.